It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both. There was a lot of controversy when I was appointed minister. From day one, actually the day I was appointed, I received a call of someone saying, "You will not be minister." The second that is they announced in the night, then the next day, "No, not Musenero." So I want to assume that in that ministry there were people, or people related, who wanted to take this position. And so they did not see that I deserved to be there. And they have been fighting from day one. These people have been writing petitions. So they've been writing, and their petitions have been changing. They've been writing petitions, I think about 10 petitions. There's no office in this country which is significant, which has not received a petition against me. Even before, I hadn't touched money, I hadn't worked with them, they started. So I don't know their exact motive. Of course, then they started to mobilize. And I am a technical person. I didn't really know how they were mobilizing. So I'm actually quite surprised. But a committee was set up to investigate, because the allegation was that I had eaten money. But that was not the first accusation. There were so many accusations that even before I was handed over to, there were so many accusations. But thank God.
They said you employed your relatives, including your own husband. What?
No, first of all, my husband is so far advanced in his career. This office, this project called Preside, was a small group. I was the biggest person there. I mean, in terms of, I was the presidential advisor. And then I had administrative staff to help me do things, and a few scientist staff to help me work together with the scientists. And then we had a think tank committee, which consisted of people who do their work, and they only gathered, just like all committees, all oversight committees. They were not employees. So the committee has reported on that. I did not employ my husband. There was one staff, and that is my PA. And everybody knows what a personal assistant means. Because in this kind of environment, you have to be safe. So your personal assistant is your personal assistant, actually. It has to be somebody trusted. The rest of the people, I have no relations with them. It's because of their skills. They supported me when the president gave me the task. We worked together, they understood, and they were ready to go. And remember, this was a project for 1 year, and it was during COVID. It was during COVID. People could not move, offices were closed, and it was an emergency. So, and anyway, there were 7 staff. There were 7 staff. So, we were still working to put a framework and a structure on Preside in the next year. Then the ministry changed. And we said, now there is no need to put structure to this. Let's just now merge this. So, but the first thing is I was accused. If you remember, I was accused that I misused the money. I want the public to know Musenero did not handle any money. The money was given to the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. And that money was sent directly to scientists, to Uganda Virus Institute, to JCRC, right from there. And the person who was sending them the money was responsible for accounting. However, since I'm the one, Preside is the one who mobilized the scientists. We had a memorandum of understanding, which spelled out my roles and their roles. So, the monies that we are talked about, by those people fighting me. First of all, that money did not exist by the time. The money which was given to me, or which was given to these scientists, was actually 28 billion. They had approved 31.03 billion in that financial year, but not all the money was released. 2.6 billion was not transferred to scientists. That means it never left the Ministry of Science. That money, whether it was released from finance, I don't know. I have letters written to us informing us this is the amount of money, and we submitted, okay, that money is like that, distribute it like this, which was in the memorandum of understanding. And that money which was released, that is all the money which was released in that year when I was the chairperson of Preside. Then, based on the progress of the work, we presented next year's budget to the Ministry of Science. And them also understanding the amount of work we had done and what we were going to do, they approved and presented that budget in their budget. Now, by the time those funds came, the ministry had been abolished. So those funds, we entered a transition. We went into a transition. So July, August, September, October, November, December is when we were given a new accounting officer at the office of the president. And that is when the first batch of money left Ministry of Finance and it went to office of the president. And office of the president now worked out new agreements with the scientists so that they can continue with the work. And the committee agrees that this is excellent work, which must be, which we must continue to support. The committee's report agrees, which I'm really happy with. So these figures that people are coming up with, 165, they just want to sensationalize because they think that if you mention that these big figures, no, there is no that money. So in the report, they clearly, and I really want to thank this committee, they talked about 31.03 billion, which is the money which was allocated by finance in the year 2020-2021. And of that money, 15.787 was to be used for equipment. So it never left the Ministry of Science. It was transferred directly to people supplying machines, handled by the permanent secretary. So it never came anywhere. It didn't even go to scientists. The scientists received the equipment. Then the other money, 15.245, was supposed to go to the projects directly. Again, this money was being transferred directly by the permanent secretary from his office to those people whose projects we had approved. Together with the ministry, we did not approve projects alone. There were other monies. For example, before Preside was formed, they actually procured equipment for scientists. And this money was in the financial year 2019-2020, which was 5.3 billion. And that money was used directly by the Ministry of Science, the permanent secretary then, to buy equipment. Yes, it went to support this work, but we didn't touch it. And the whole process of procurement was followed. Then there was money to support the staff and administrative action and some activities that Preside had to do, as the scientists in Preside had to do, like collecting data to guide information, decision making. So that money was put at State House, and it was 3.35 billion. And we only, since Preside didn't have a bank account, Preside never had a bank account. neither did any of us receive money directly, except the staff would get their salaries. Or if a staff has an activity to do, that is the money that they would give. Small money which you're going to use now, and petty cash. So the rest, otherwise we operated out of State House. State House paid the staff salaries. State House provided fuel, the fuel cards, paid for fuel directly at petrol stations. So personally, I was paid by Office of the President, through Office of the President, because all presidential advisors are paid through there. So money, part of the 31.03 billion was not released. 2.6 billion did not get released to the scientists. So one, Musenero touched zero money because I didn't have a bank account. Preside didn't have a bank account, and I was never signatory to any amount of money. So I wish the public to understand that I did not touch any money at all. At all.
Because you were a leader, they were saying, why did you streamline the things?
No, the things were very streamlined. The streamlining was done by the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. Actually, because Preside did not have capacity to handle money, we said Preside should not handle money. In section 4 of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Preside and the Ministry, we say the Ministry will be responsible for accountability. And the committee notes clearly that the Ministry should have taken this role seriously. Actually, I thought that they would, like say, okay, let's streamline these guidelines. And when we saw that they were not doing it, we got internal audit to help our scientists. So, and then there was an impression given that Preside did not, because we are the ones who were dealing with the scientists and their technology and the work, we said we will collect the accountabilities, and we did. We collected, we provided internal audit to make sure that the accounts are auditable, to cross-check, to make sure they are complete. And when the Auditor General would go to science requesting for audits, they would send them to us. And they would always find there is no single time. We were audited 3 times. There is no single time that Auditor General came and we were not ready. The scientists from all over the country sent their files. And Auditor General's people, I think 2 times, they carried the files and they would sign for those files. Each institution brought all the original documents. So then when the Auditor General finishes, they return the files and we return them to the scientists. So we were audited during the first audit on COVID funds. And then the second audit when the ministry was closed. And then there was a 3rd audit for which report has not yet been released. But actually there is a final audit which went on in the ministry. So in all those audit reports, there is nowhere that the Auditor General points out on money lost. There were some times like you audit and people have received the money and they have not yet utilized it. But those funds can be accounted for, but they have not yet been. Like I think there was one audit because money released in Q4 and then it is committed. So, but it has just been released. And the scientists are still collecting the accountability documents. However, there is no evidence in any audit that there is any money lost. Yeah. So I think there is a question on the minds of many Ugandans. Who is this Musenero? Because to many, I came on the scene during COVID. And then after that, I became minister. And then I was portrayed as this evil person. Now, Musenero, I'm a Ugandan. I'm born in a very small district from a very humble background, Mutebo district. I studied in the village, in humble schools. I studied veterinary medicine at university. Then I studied medical microbiology at Cornell University in USA under government sponsorship. When I finished, I taught in Makerere. And I spent 16 years as staff of Makerere. Of course, some of those years I was on study. But the one thing that my students remember about me, sometimes I ask them, did you understand? They say, no. Yeah, but you inspired me. You inspired me. And I've spent most of my life out of university working on epidemics. And I know that the biggest population now, they may not have this kind of history. But I worked with the Ministry of Health to fight epidemics. There is nowhere hard enough that Museveni doesn't go to save people. I traveled the entire country. Whenever you say there is a disease here, I have to go there, driven by the passion to save lives and the passion to serve. So I have been to the remotest parts of this country. As long as there are people there, by there they are human beings, I would go there to try and save lives. So I became one of Uganda's best epidemiologists. My most biggest endeavors here was Ebola Bundibujo. There was Ebola outbreak in Bundibujo. I don't think I've ever worked so hard in my life, but because the population was at threat, I worked together with a lot of my colleagues, and it was during that time, I think, that the president noticed me, that there's this woman who simply works hard. She just works hard. Whether I'm paid or not, it's the passion for the people, the passion. I wouldn't want someone to die when there is something that I can do. Now, because of that experience, during 2014 in West Africa, when there was Ebola, at first I was semi-retired. I'd always wanted to retire and go and do community service. I have built 3 schools in my village, basically not to make money, but because the education was very, very poor. So I was using my salary, small monies I get, make matafari with my brothers, and put up really these social enterprises, because people would come to ask me money and I didn't have it. But I thought that if we can have a school, because that was the main reason they always asked for money, I built some schools. So I have a secondary school. When you reach there, you see that this is not a woman who has stolen money. The buildings are bricks. there is no plaster. Actually, at the beginning of this year, when students are just coming back, the wind came and blew off part of the roof. But I am a person who loves people, and I want people to be served. So I went to Sierra Leone in 2014. I have never been in anything like that. After staying there for 3 weeks, the organization which had sponsored me to go said they were no longer going to continue because there was no end. I chose to stay there. I could have died. I worked so hard, and the people in Sierra Leone can testify about this. Eventually, World Health Organization took me up, and I worked in Sierra Leone for 3 years. After we had fought Ebola. Ebola is no joke. Whereas here we know COVID, the majority of people recover. Ebola, even if you recover, it's like you've gone to the edge of hell and come back. But we worked, and served, and it is when I came back, I stayed as a consultant. I felt I had served enough. I stayed home as a consultant, and eventually I was requested to support Ebola in Congo. First I went to Kinshasa to support the design of response to that, and then secondly, later I went to Rwanda to support the Rwandan government because the Ebola was just across the border. And I was just coming back. I was just coming back from Rwanda that I was appointed as senior presidential advisor. So the impression that people have that I am a heartless person is completely wrong. I don't know how many people I have helped, sent through school, people I don't know. People I don't know. And some of them after graduation, they disappear, they don't even come back. You may ask, if I've worked all these things, what do I have? Actually, I don't have a lot. I don't have a lot because I use my money to care for people. I may have a piece of land here, I have a small home in Mgongo, not a big home or luxurious home, very basic. I drive a small car, Mitsubishi IO, until they gave me this ministerial car. That's my car, that's the one I have. And I bought it second hand from someone. My schools were built out of salary and all the allowances I used to get when I travel until they became self-sustaining. I don't get profit out of them, but I keep maintaining and keep expanding. Like the secondary school, because of the demand for secondary education, I keep, you know, whatever money they get, I put in. I put it back. And my ambition has always been to have a children's home when I retire. I would like to look after orphans. During COVID, actually, I attempted to take a street kid home, but I failed in that venture. I actually took that kid, but it became very difficult to keep that kid. But up to now, my heart breaks that I wasn't able to help him. Now, as a scientist, I know science, and but sometimes we scientists, we simply do our work. We don't talk. We don't talk. Now, there are decisions sometimes you make for the good of the people, but then the people don't know that because they have other needs. They have other needs. For example, when you make a decision to lock down, you are trying to balance good and bad. I mean, you're trying to balance bad and worst. But because for you, you're a scientist, you can foresee the disaster going to happen. Then you have to choose which is going to be the better evil for the people. And even during lockdown, people don't know and we don't talk. But I operated a community kitchens in Kampala. I got churches I used to get my salary actually. And a few people like Ham Chigundu, I talked to him, he gave me some money. But I used to get my salary because when I was presidential advisor, I didn't receive any allowance. But I worked with churches and we opened community kitchens because I discovered that there were these people where the breadwinner has got COVID and is either in the hospital, and then all these people at home are not allowed to move. So we supplied a hot meal to these affected families, very, very many. Across, I started in one, I saw one family struggling on TV. So I said, you know, at least I'll find food, I'll have food. So in this kind of situation, there were many people caught up in hospital because they went to a private facility, either they didn't. And if I had any money, I tried because they would arrest people in hospital, you know, or somebody has died and the hospital is refusing to release the body. I made a lot of those. In fact, out of COVID, because it was just my salary, which was taxed, and a little bit of it left. At the end of the month, I would have no money left because
These people are here making noise for you, but you have stolen billions.
no, first of all, there are a few things that people need to know. Musenero is a Moroccan. Now, I know there are many people who have claimed to be Moroccan and they don't live it. I live it. It's not because I belong to a church, not because of this. My passion and love for people cannot allow me take even a single shilling. And even people who have worked with me, even the people are choosing me, by the way, they know the truth. They are making the public to, but the people who are choosing me, they know the truth. They know that Musenero can never, ever, ever touch a shilling which is not hers. I can never, because that's not how I am brought up, and that's not how my faith in God leads me. I want to live the Christianity which God expects of me from the Bible. And principle number one is being a person of integrity. Not simply integrity in that I don't misuse what I have been given, but that I get the best. And it is that drive, it's that desire to serve that made me work so hard during COVID, even to mobilize these scientists, because I'm seeing not only that time, but I'm seeing the future of our children. We are not creating a lot of new things and new opportunities for them. Already that work on vaccines created a lot of opportunities for children, for us, for people who didn't. They were unemployed scientists. They got jobs. They are going to produce for us something. And really, if I receive the support, my dream is to create at least 10,000 science jobs by 2026. And they are easy to create. And in the short time that I have worked as minister, I have seen the opportunities. I have traveled all over this country. I go and sit down. I don't visit universities ceremonially. I actually go and sit down and engage them. I don't visit institutions ceremonially. I sit down and work with them because that's what we need. And so I'm a very loving person. Anybody who has been, in fact, that's the people who know me keep saying, these people don't know Monica. And if you did an investigative, do an investigative documentary about me where I don't know, just go to the people who know me and they will tell you. The people whom I've worked with. I have worked with international agencies. I have never, ever, ever been accused of corruption. And I started working in 1992. So I did not start yesterday. 1992 to 2022, how many years of work are those? I have never, you can search until recently. If you search any information before 2021, you'll never, on internet or anywhere, I have an international reputation. So I am not a corrupt person. I have a lot of compassion. I have a lot of love for people. People simply have not got to know me. It's just that the people who are choosing me, they speak louder. Now you have seen someone like Honorable Yona Nsingzi. Have you heard me even insult him? Have you heard me speak a bad thing about him? I can't, because I think that human beings must be treated with dignity. We must respect each other. So whether others respect me or not, I want to treat them with respect. And I also want you to know that when I was given this ministry, I treated the staff like a mother. I wanted to take all of them. However, there were a few of them who convinced everybody to be, to work against me. But the first things, I talked to the leaders, the directors. I called them and said, through the PS, I said, can I speak? I want to understand what's going on and what has happened. Then I grouped the staff. I had grouped them into technical staff and support staff. Because I knew these other support staff, they call them communicadors. They can easily be placed anywhere. But these ones who are scientists, they are going to have a hard time to find where to be placed. And I knew this was the biggest collection of science, and I wanted to work with them. However, there were a few, I think those ones who thought they should have been the ones who are minister. They kept mobilizing those scientists to not to want to work with me, because they convinced them. I held Zoom meetings with, I'd started the technical staff, I held Zoom meetings with them to understand what they were doing, and I was trying to see, okay, this one can do this one can do this. Once I thought that the structure was going to come up quickly. However, outside my control, it was nothing in my control, the transition took long. But I can tell you, I fought every single day to make sure that these people get paid. We have students. We had students in Japan. And I could never sleep, because for us here, maybe you have some relatives and what, because taking 6 months without salary, that's a huge hit for most Ugandans. And I worked and tried. I remember crying in frustration, mostly because the staff were not getting their salaries, because I imagined how they were surviving. And one of my best days was the day salaries were paid before Christmas. You know, I sat with the office of the secretary office of the president. I said, if they have given us money, please make sure people get money before Christmas. They have had enough tears. Making a vaccine has many steps. First, there is the research stage, where you develop the vaccine. That is done in laboratories, and it takes a lot of work for the scientists to figure out and bring out that vaccine. Then the second stage, after you have come up with a candidate vaccine from the labs, and they are usually things in small tubes, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of expensive chemicals. Now that is where you create what we call intellectual property. So after that, you have to test the candidate vaccine. And this is how we test it in the first. You start by testing it in the animals. Sometimes we even test it in cells, just in the petri dish. Many people have seen a petri dish. It is like a plastic, small plastic round plate where we can grow cells outside the body. So we test that. We test it in the animals. Depending on the vaccine, it could be laboratory animals, they could be mice, they could be rabbits, it could also be primates like the chimpanzees, although now use of chimpanzees has been reduced. So when that vaccine shows, one, that it is not harmful to the body of the animal, because there are things which are common. Once it damages the body of the animal, you stop there. Then you have to go back and do more research. Now, now one of our vaccines has already passed. It is not harmful. The others we are going to test. Then the second, after you have found out that now it is not harmful and you've got the good dose, then you test, does it actually induce the body to make the soldiers to fight this particular disease? Then the second stage is you use the animals to find out, this vaccine, does it protect? If I vaccinate an animal and then expose it to COVID, does it fall sick? So now that is the stage. Then from there you go to testing in the human beings. Now before you finish the testing in the animals, you don't have a factory. You don't build a factory. Because a factory is supposed to produce something which has been tested. Otherwise, you will build a factory and then your vaccine may not be tested or proved. And in a country like Uganda, where we have not been producing these vaccines, so you'll be building a factory for this vaccine. However, once you have to be prepared, especially in an emergency like a COVID. So once you finish the animal studies, especially this middle one, the middle one shows you, the one where you show, is it immunogenic? It will show you the hope. So now you have to put up, after you finish the animal studies, you have to, with the vaccine, you need to prepare a vaccine that you will use to test in animals. This vaccine is not yet ready for sale, and you don't have a big factory. You put up a small factory. Now, this is not like a big building you'll see. It will be a room somewhere in the lab, but that room is treated very differently. It has to be satisfied that it is a good manufacturing practice, or what people commonly see as GMP. You are still working in the lab, in the building as a lab. And there's a lot of things which go on there, a lot of things. So you have specialized staff, you have specialized equipment. Now, the money I was given was used to buy the staff, to buy the specialized equipment. It was used to buy the chemicals that we need in the process. It was used to pay the specialized staff who have to work in there. So to source all these many things which come in. Now we have a candidate, vaccines. So we are going to put up what we call a pilot plant. Now that plant is not a big commercial factory. You may see it, you may not see it unless you enter the lab. Now the purpose is to produce for us vaccine for clinical trials. Clinical trials is now we've taken our vaccine into the human being. The vaccine has proven, and you have a lot of people who are supervising that work. Every step must meet international standards. Otherwise, your vaccine will not be allowed to go into the humans. So now, once you do that, you put up a pilot plant. That's the first time you'll be seeing something like a factory. So I think you have helped me to understand the minds of many people, because sometimes as scientists, because we know these things, sometimes we don't imagine the struggles that the population is going through. So we are at the stage now of preparing the pilot plant, so that we can, as soon as we finish this last animal studies, we can produce, because we have confidence that one of these vaccines, which has finished the other 2 stages of animal studies, it has shown very good results. But also building the pilot plant takes a bit of time, and it has to be inspected. So if you don't do it ahead of time, then you'll finish, then you'll wait for another 6 months or a year before. So we are working on putting up that pilot plant, and its purpose is to produce enough doses of vaccine for clinical trials.
Okay.
Now, there is a reason, there are many reasons why a country begins to work on their own science. We can always buy things, but countries that buy technology and produce no technology, they always remain underdeveloped countries. Now, since Uganda wants to become a developed country, being able to produce our own technology is one of those things. It's actually not just that other countries are producing the vaccines, but are we part of it? Vaccines, one, they are public health. Now, when vaccines started appearing, you saw many African countries just yelling, the people are being protected, they are vaccinating their populations. It is until they have finished vaccinating their own people, then they will give you. Now, the second issue is vaccines are part of an economy. They are things that you sell and make money. So we want to develop this capacity. We may have started with COVID, but the capacity now we have built, the machines that we have built, the people, the machines that we have installed now, the equipment, the people that we have trained and the additional research that we have put in now, being able to produce some things ourselves, they put us as part of the market, part of the people who are participating in vaccine production. Now, many countries in Africa are not trying to develop their own technologies. What they are doing is set up a factory just to pack, fill and finish. Now, that is not all that bad, that you do fill and finish. But once that COVID is over, then there is nothing more to do with that factory, because you are not doing any more what? Research. So everything that we set up is going to remain as a national asset, and Uganda is going to continue being a vaccine research, development, and manufacturing company. Now, when I wanted to talk about the last stage where you will see the factory, which is going to be visible, that's when we go into production now. We do now, that is when you build the factory, which you are talking about. So it is like I am traveling to Gulu. I'm traveling to Gulu, but I'm in Kampala. So up to this point, I've traveled part of the journey. Now, I am not yet in Gulu, but I am traveling to Gulu. So the questions you are asking is, where are you in the journey? Now, when reaching Gulu, be like, now you see a factory, we are producing the vaccine for sale. But if it was that easy, then many countries would have been working on it. But it's very, very important. Again, I have said this before. It is misleading for us to assume at this point that COVID is over. Actually, today I was reading a report from CDC in America. They are thinking that within a year, the cases of COVID in America will have doubled. They will have, so they are getting a lot more and more. You saw China. China was like, for us, we are done. And today in lockdown now, there is no history where a successful disease like COVID came, infected so many people all over the world, and then it just vanished. If a disease is going to disappear, it will be these ones which come attack like the predecessor to COVID, the one they called SARS. That one came because it was not very efficient in spreading. It stopped and it disappeared. But a disease which is so successful like COVID, that virus is very successful. One, it spreads via breathing. You know, as people talk, as people cough, there will be viruses that spread in, or germs that spread in very, those ones can disappear, you can control them. But this one spreads by breathing. Just you're doing the normal things, you're talking to your friend, that's a very successful one. Secondly, it changes. It changes so fast. It changes. So when people who have been infected, again, they get exposed, they will get exposed to a new version of the virus. And this will continue. We know that such epidemics usually stay for not less than 5 years. And then the virus may not disappear. And when you look at the vaccines that we have, they actually don't stop infection. They just help you not to be very sick, which means this virus is going to stay around. Now, we were not vaccinating children. Those children are growing. They are going to continuously need to do what? To be vaccinated. But we have also seen, we started with 1 dose, then a second dose, then a booster dose, and now in countries like America, they are taking another dose. And we have seen that most of the immunity, the strong with the current vaccines, 6 to 9 months, the immunity has gone down, and those people get infected again. So our current prediction, and science works on predictions, our current prediction is that COVID is going to be around, and we are going to contribute to the vaccination and protection of Ugandans as well as Africans. Thank you very much. The COVID-19 vaccine, or let me say vaccine manufacturing in the country, As you know, Uganda had never tried to start their own vaccine. However, when COVID came, first of all, nobody had a vaccine in the world. And at that point, we were all trying to look. And I was requested, actually, through a directive to the Prime Minister, as a part of my job. This was part of my job as a presidential advisor on epidemics, to assess the situation, identify scientists who can work to start this work for us, not only for COVID, but to build this capacity, because it's known that wherever we are going to have more epidemics coming. So I worked and went to the institutions, because there are just a handful of institutions with this kind of capacity. So I went to the institutions where I found this kind of capacity, because earlier, when the Ministry of Science issued a call for scientists to apply for COVID funds, not a single one applied for vaccine. So this is something that we had to build the understanding for. So I went to the institutions where the scientists were and where they had some labs. And these were Uganda Virus Research Institute and Makerere University. And the scientists gathered, and we discussed and agreed that there were enough sufficient specialities in the teams, except that the specialities were each working alone. If we built them into a team, then they could provide the expertise which is required for vaccine. And so we started on 4 types of vaccine, 4 technologies, because vaccines are different types. That's why you see Pfizer has a different one, AstraZeneca has a different one. So we started that work from scratch. And normally this kind of work takes years. That kind of work where you start from scratch, it takes years before you come up with a candidate vaccine. But our scientists worked, and within 1 year, we had 3 candidate vaccines. So the first vaccine, which is made in Makerere, is now in the last phase of animal trials. We delayed to start that stage because we were looking for that special mice. They were not available globally. We had ordered in the first company in China. After 6 months, they returned our money because the international demand was too much. Then we ordered from another company in the US. It took over 6 months for them to actually send. But they will send you only a pair or 2. Each country, each people who are ordering, that is all they could give because of the international demand. Now, so with that vaccine, we produced the candidate vaccine, purified it, carried out 2 stages of testing in the normal white mice. We have white mice we use in the lab. Not these ones which run around, but the ones in the lab. We call them Swiss mice. We finished that, and the results were very, very good from the scientific point of view. So they encouraged us. Now we are just waiting for these mice, because we bought only 2 pairs. And by the way, I don't handle any money. So this was being done by the scientists, by the institutions, not me. Of course, when you're a leader, everything is ascribed to you. Because for me, I never handled money, because I was never an accounting officer. So the money was passed from the Ministry of Science to the institution, and those institutions have accounting officers. So it was bought through those systems. And so now we are multiplying. The vaccine is ready for that last phase of animal trials, but we received these mice at the end of April. They are just 2 pairs, but along with them, we paid for a license. As a country, we can multiply them indefinitely. So we paid for that license. That's why they're a bit expensive. So we don't have to go back and buy again. So we are multiplying them now. The mice take only 14 days pregnant. Then they will suckle. So every month you can get a new set of young mice. So we are multiplying them to use, so we will use them in all the vaccines. But there is this vaccine which is just waiting to go into that last phase. What is special about these mice? These mice have their system, their genetics have been changed so that they behave like human beings in terms of COVID. Normal mice that you see which run around in our community, even the white ones that we use, they don't get infected with COVID. If they get infected, they don't get sick. So you cannot test whether the vaccine has protected them. So this vaccine is now going to be tested. This, we call it the challenge study. So we have proved that the vaccine is safe because in the first set we never saw any kind of damage to the body in the first set of animal studies. In the second set, we have proof that this vaccine is immunogenic. Immunogenic means it stimulates the body to produce the antibodies that you need. Now we need to prove, does it protect? So that's why we needed these special mice. And so the vaccine is going to take these, it is after we finish that, and all these are requirements, and we are doing them to international standards. After that, should we find that it is actually effective, protective, then we are going to start the clinical studies in human beings. The second vaccine is just being prepared to begin the animal studies. That vaccine, we call it inactivated, it delayed because the chemicals that we need were not available on the global market. Because everybody, especially in the developed world, they are all trying to use the same chemicals. So for us who had not done this, we are always not a priority. And it has taken a lot of effort. So it delayed a bit because of those issues, but we are now preparing the vaccine. We have grown it, we have purified it, we are now quantifying the amounts so that we start the animal studies. And then the third vaccine, you prepare it, and then after preparing, it is like the AstraZeneca vaccine. Then that preparation has to grow in special cells. So now we had a bit of delay getting those cells too from the international people who had them. We have learned so much, and as Uganda, we are now going to embark on capacity to do some of these things which delayed us. These are things we would have never found out if we didn't start. So the third vaccine, we've just got the cells which grow that. You begin by constructing something like a new construct. It's like a virus, but it doesn't multiply in human beings. But it is used to carry a piece of the genetic material from the COVID virus. So after you make that, you have to grow them in special cells. These are laboratory cells. So when we grow it there, then we have to purify it and get the vaccine itself, which we are going to. So we are preparing it. However, that particular vaccine study has produced for us already 2 patentable products. We are trying to see how to go about patenting them because of issues that I may not be able to explain here. But those products are already there. Things that we tried to buy earlier, but it didn't work.